Hey everyone, Ryan here at Lakeside Studios, and this video is going to be kind of another improvised general gear discussion. And I've been thinking about this topic for quite some time. In fact, I touched on bits and pieces of this in, I think, a heavy reflection at some point, definitely at one of the gear reviews. But a recent event has pushed me over the edge, and now I'm a little concerned about the future of a particular brand, and that is, of course, Randall amplifiers. So as of recording this video, earlier today, Ola England put out his weekly FAQ videos. I don't watch all of them, but one of the taglines, one of the parts in the description really stood out to me, and said he was basically leaving Randall amplifiers. And this is something I'd kind of been expecting for a while. For the past little while on his content, you know, have been seeing him use his signature Randall gear, and he went as far as to record his solo album with the Porten NTS by Neural DSP, which is their kind of their NATOS sounding plugin. Although I'm pretty sure that was actually profiled on one of his Porten amps, or maybe even the Randall Satan. But regardless, you know, he hasn't been using it much, which I didn't think too much about. You know, as a YouTube content creator, it is kind of counterintuitive to be using the same amplifier all the time, especially one that sounds so great for metal. Kind of pointless using something like that if you're demoing a boost pedal, because it really doesn't need it. And as far as a brand goes, it's going to be so loud outside, I guess. Everyone's riding motorcycles. So ignore that. But given what he's trying to do with his Solar guitar brand, and you know, now maybe there'll be an opportunity for Solar amplifiers and effects, depending on who he can get on board. And especially coming at it from a YouTube point of view, it really doesn't make sense to be locked down to an endorsement from an outside company. Personally, I don't want to be constrained to just one amplifier platform. That is so constrictive in terms of creativity, and because, you know, a lot of different amps sound good and they do their own different thing. And that's why I think signature heads kind of suck a lot of the times. I love a good signature pedal. There's a few signature guitars out there that really work, and some of them have been, you know, kind of disseminated to the point they're not even real signatures anymore. Look at the Les Paul, it started as a signature. But with like an amp head, if you have a 2-channel signature head, that's all you can play, you know? And a lot of the times the people that take these endorsements aren't even known for playing that brand. But unless you're someone like John Petrucci, who has basically a customized, modified Mark II C+ that does everything he would ever regularly do, then a lot of the times it's going to be, you know, more of a hindrance than a help. And I think the Randall Satan situation is definitely reflective of that. I mean, that's why I want to use different stuff. There's times I want kind of a British sound. There's stuff that I want the American rectifier sound. I like the Mark II C+. If I want an orange sound or a 5150 sound, I'll go get one of those. You can't do that with all one amplifier head. And a lot of the times I think some of these products should have just been collaborations and not signatures. Like the PV Invective from Misha Mansour. Totally, in my opinion, they're just using his name to sell it, because that could have just been a 6505 American-made hot rod version that's got MIDI implementation and that kind of stuff. And I think that's really reflective of what the market's going to. And I think that's what's kind of biting Randall in the ass right now, because they really hedged their bets on signature products in the last, well, what now, 5-6 years since the whole Porten collaboration happened. Now, you can actually go much further back in time than that and see that a lot of the problems, a lot of the issues that Randall's facing now is kind of been a vicious cycle for them. So the first thing is Randall as a brand is not the same kind of company that they were when they were founded. So, you know, Don Randall, ex-Fender executive, founded Randall Amplifiers, I think it was late 70s, and sold off the company about a decade later. And then it was purchased by U.S. Music Corporation. They're kind of a distributor and a public, almost holdings company, you could say, for a lot of stuff. They'll throw like Marshall and Eden amplification in their portfolio, but they don't own them. They just distribute for them. But they do own stuff like Washburn, Parker Guitars, and Randall Amplifiers. So it's not like your, you know, industry leaders like, you know, Friedman Amps or, you know, Mesa Boogie Amps or anything where they have a concrete headquarters. That is the company. This is kind of another one of those managed brands that it's really going to depend on what the shareholders want at that point. And so that's the environment they've been working under. And as far as an identity goes, well, they really don't have much of one. They've been facing a crisis in that department for, well, as long as I've been into guitar gear. To help combat a little bit of that in the early 2000s, they enlisted the help of Bruce Ignator, who helped kickstart the MTS line of amps. That's kind of a cool thing because it's like Synergy amplifiers before Synergy was a thing. That was the exact same concept. Where you have these individual preamp modules and you basically slide it in, and now you've got, kind of a power amp head shell that can house all sorts of different amplifier sounds. So, maybe one channel you got a 5150 sound, the next one's a Fender Clean, and then you got a Marshall JCM Crunch thing that's kind of in between. And, if you want all three high gain metal sounds, just, different channels, you could do that as well. So the cool thing, and I think they were trying to get out in front of some of the technology coming out at that time. The problem though is I don't think those exactly flew off the shelf. There's definitely some demand for them, definitely support even today, but you don't see them anywhere. You don't see people still playing them like you do, other amplifiers from the 90s or early 2000s, which leads me to believe that they weren't exactly the biggest financial success for them. And obviously their partnership with Bruce Ignator ends. It ended at some point. Now, this post-Ignator era of Randall amps is when I kind of started getting into guitar playing. And I remember around 2008 to 2009, they were pretty much just advertising solid state combo amps for the most part. I mean, there were like standalone heads and stuff. I think Kirk Hammett got on board with Randall around that time period because they were kind of pushing his solid state, his signature series really hard at that point. That was a partnership that, obviously it's for money, no kidding, but I really don't understand why that panned out anyway, for a band that is known for Marshall and Mesa Boogie sounds primarily. And then, it all kind of fell quiet from them. Everything was pretty much static. Their lineup didn't change too much, maybe a couple refreshes here and there. But things really changed with the Mike Porten collaboration, which came in about 2012 with products rolling out 2013, 2014. And this was kind of a game changer for them because while they did some tube stuff beforehand, the MTS primarily, this was where it was like, okay, we are defining ourselves as a heavy metal brand. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we're going to bring in this amplifier design expertise, and he's going to license some of his designs. We're going to take, something like the Porten ATOS and the Porten Meathead and put them into, like the 667, the Thrasher, a bunch of signature series. So you had among the Randall Satan, Scott Ian had a signature, Kirk Hammett has his Meathead looking signature, and had other competitors like the Randall Diavolo, which I think is like a 5150 sound from kind of, my experience with them, as well as their other solid state stuff. So there was still an RG100, there's still combos, that sort of thing. But they really, went all out on saying, screw everything else, we're all about heavy metal. As fate would have it, history would repeat itself, and Mike Porten did not renew his contract with Randall, and he was gone by the beginning of 2016. So they're once again left without any expertise, without any name to back the brand up, without any real vision of what they want to be as a brand. Of course, they still had plenty of Porten's designs to market and to sell, and they're still doing so today. But it's kind of an awkward spot when, you sort of have to put his name on these things. Who knows exactly how much he, personally designed every one of these, but definitely inspired by a lot of his circuits. So you're like, yeah, this guy hasn't been with us for 3.5 years at this point, but hey, this is designed by Mike Porten. Here you go. And then now you've got pulling up their main page here. So Kirk Hammett signature, that's good. 50 watt Randall Satan, only England signature in 2018. So that came out like almost a year ago to the date now. And Ola's face is still all over the place, even though he's not technically endorsed anymore. If you go to their artists page, that's pretty pathetic, ain't it? You got Kirk Hammett, Ole England, Nuno Betancourt. I don't even know if Nuno's using their stuff. Kirk Hammett, I would be willing to bet that he's on some sort of contract where he has to play those heads for a certain amount of years. And probably as soon as that runs out, he's going to stop. If I were a betting man, of course, no evidence for that. It's just kind of how you see these things pan out. And like I said, Ola dropped them. There's some featured stuff here, but there's other signatures. I think George Lynch had a signature. I think obviously Scott Ian had one. They're nowhere to be seen. So they're not in exactly a great spot. And oh, by the way, when those other amps came out, it's been 5.5, 6 years at this point. So they've done nothing besides, release a couple, like maybe the 45 from the Diavolo and the Thrasher 50, the Satan 50, all these like smaller spin-offs have came out, but that's it. They have really been sitting on ass and letting their artist pool just bleed out. So with that bit of a history lesson, you might be able to see why I'm a little more than slightly concerned for the future of Randall amps as a brand, because it seems, based on the trend, they really don't know what to do with the name without outside help. And the direction really depends on whoever's leading the helm at that point. With the MTS stuff, it was like, yeah, let's be everyone. Let's be everything. We'll be the best of all worlds. You can have one platform and make all the tones you want. And then with the Porten Era, it's like, now we're just all out metal, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It has some brand confidence behind it, saying we know what we want to do, and that's cool. But, the other end of the spectrum is you got names like Thrasher, Satan, Diavolo. You're not going to get any blues rock or country artists to play that kind of stuff, which sucks because, as I've shown in my own Thrasher review, it did a lot of great tones in the breakup and lower mid-gain stuff, but it's totally marketed for metal players. So, that's kind of the double-edged sword behind that. And so if history is going to repeat itself again, then I guess we should all be here waiting for the next big talent acquisition to happen so they can roll out a new line of amplifiers and pretend the last generations didn't happen. The problem is I don't necessarily think that's going to happen this time around, because who would want to work with Randall right now? We live in this era of online marketing, and you have so much availability to so many untapped markets that weren't there beforehand, where you've got industry leaders has basically built their business out of their garage in one way or another. So if you're an up and coming amp builder, or especially if you're well established at this point, why would you want to pour your time and energy, sell your intellectual property to a brand that obviously doesn't know how to do anything with it past 4 or 5 years? That's not the direction I would want to go. So if Randall really wants to turn this around, or I should say Randall's management wants to turn this around, they really need to do a couple things. The first thing they should have already done is had new amps, something, a refresh, a new coat of paint, just get the name back out there. It should have already happened at NAMM 2019. Obviously it hasn't. Their booth looked pretty much identical to the ones, the year before that and the year before that. But they really needed to get out ahead of this kind of stuff, because it's just a matter of time before more artists drop them. I don't foresee them picking many more up either. And they definitely needed to get ahead of this Ola England thing, because he's their best friend as far as online marketing goes. He, has millions and millions of cumulative views, and he's always, at least when he was using the Satan, basically had a giant advertisement in the back of his video for free on their part. So now that they've lost him, it's, I think, a pretty devastating blow. So they needed to get out ahead of that. But I think that hasn't happened yet because, number two, they need to define what Randall is as a brand. If you're going to be the metal brand, fine, that's cool. But really stick to your guns on that and, keep up with the trends. From an outsider's perspective, it really seems like there's no one in management, no one's at the helm that's saying, this is the direction we're going, damn it. We have this to do by this deadline. We've got to put out this many new products, and they're not keeping up with market trends. Just do something. Try something for a while. Pivot if you have to, depending on what the market demands. But what it also looks like, from at least the consumer point of view, is, the product development teams don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't have any real leadership, at the very least, which oftentimes is the biggest factor when we're talking about this kind of stuff. But based on collaborations with the the past amp designers, it's like they don't have anyone that really wants to make a name for themselves or really wants to advance the brand. So they have to rely on outside help. And maybe, their R&D part of Randall is just a revolving door. You can't get anyone to stick around. No one really cares. I don't know. But this is the kind of stuff I personally witnessed in different, job sectors. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is indeed the case. And maybe that's not true whatsoever. Maybe they have the best talent. Maybe there's all sorts of cool designs going on in the background, but there's nothing going on. There's no communication happening back and forth between the consumers and the company. There's no one who is the voice of Randall. And for all of that combined, it really it says we're not interested. It says there's no reason that you should waste your time as an employee here. It certainly says to anyone else who might want to collaborate with them, stay 100 feet back. So worst case scenario, let's say none of this stuff gets resolved. Let's say they just keep kicking the can down the highway and we don't see any new products in 2020, 2021, 2022. Will Randall go under? Will they cease to exist as a brand? I don't think so. I truly don't think we'll ever see them, really disappear. They do at least have the legacy of players like Dimebag Darrell, Chuck Schuldiner, and now Ole England, and other sponsored artists. So, there is a little bit of power to that. There is power, from consumers simply knowing the name. And, I don't think they'll ever completely dissolve, but they're certainly not safe from, bankruptcy. Like I said, they're not like their own standalone company anymore in terms of they answer to themselves, but I could absolutely see their parent corporations, selling them off at some point. It's kind of a sad state of affairs. I think a lot of brands from US Music Corp and other jam industry subsidiaries see similar treatment. Washburn Guitars is kind of in not as bad of a spot, I don't think, but they're definitely neglected. Digitech is really pathetic nowadays. In fact, let's pull up some of these brands. Let's see what Digitech's website has. But, what's new from Digitech? Well, their latest news was from NAMM 2017, so that's good. And Harman unveils the Nodal effect pedal. That's cool. All this stuff is from 2016. They had some good amount of stuff from 2015 and 2016, but that's it. And, none of this looks like Digitech products that I grew up with. Not to say a lot of those were great anyway, but as you can see, a lot of this is it's similar treatment. They really buy up, abuse these brands and then just don't do anything with them. It really sucks. So if this trend continues, again, I really could foresee them at the very least being sold off and at the very least putting them on a path that's even worse than they're on now in terms of bastardizing the brand, stripping it down, making it really unrecognizable to what it was, not only when it was founded, but even during the decent years of Randall in the past 20, 25 years. And speaking from both a personal and an industry point of view, I want Randall to succeed. I think everyone really does. It would suck to see them, lose their whatever identity they have left, or even worse, be dissolved entirely. If for no other reason, they've made competitive and really good products for the price. And when we're talking about especially the mass manufactured side of things, I really like the Randall Thrasher. I could recommend the Randall Thrasher 50 to a lot of people. For my purposes, great amp, but it just didn't stick out enough compared to the other stuff I already own. And I think that's one of the problems they have, is they straddle this line between being like too off-putting, but at the same time, they don't really define themselves any differently from what other brands are doing. It doesn't make sense to own a rectifier and a Thrasher at the same time, but it, as a standalone amp, it's pretty great. So at the end of the day, I really hope I'm wrong about some of my suspicions. I hope they come out in the next couple months and pull some rabbit out of the hat and say, oh, look what we've been cooking up this whole time. It's awesome. It's going to change the industry. That'd be great. But when all you have to go on are things like artists leaving your brand and total radio silence otherwise, this is the kind of stuff that, that happens. I hate to speculate in this way, but that's all we have to go on. So if, you know, for nothing else, I hope this video is a bit of a wake-up call to someone that has some influence over the Randall brand to see, hey, at least talk with your customers. Tell them you got something coming, anything, just anything, because as of right now, they're dead in the water if they don't do anything about it. So yeah, I hope again that everything turns out well for them, but I just seriously don't foresee them being any major contending market force within the next 5 years, especially if this stuff keeps up. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really curious because, you know, Randall isn't exactly a go-to brand anymore. So I'd be curious to know, number one, if you would be sad to see them dissolve. Number two, what you think some other things they could do to turn the ship around. So that's it. Just a little video about industry nonsense. There's plenty more of this kind of stuff to talk about. And yeah, though I'm saving one particular aspect of the guitar industry for a more in-depth video, but we'll get on that later. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.